Hi yogis, thanks for joining me for this first Off the Mat series where I'm going to be talking about the 8 limbs of yoga. Not all at once, we're going to start with the very first of the 8 limbs and we'll go from there. We'll add as many videos to this segment as we need to until we get through them. But the 8 limbs of yoga are a great place to start. It's a great way to understand that the practice of yoga is more than just asana. Many of us find yoga through a yoga studio or through a yoga video. We come to yoga by way of the postures, and then we realize that there's this whole other picture, there's this whole other world. So the 8 limbs are really just guidelines to live by. They were written as a way to alleviate suffering, and they're written in a sequential way, moving from internal to external. From external to internal, from gross to subtle. And as we progress through them, the idea is that we're becoming more and more internalized, more subtle, but also we're starting to step away from our ego and to feel a connectedness to something greater, to the whole. But as you can imagine, if we're still doing nitty-gritty work with our behaviors, then it's going to be really hard to get to that more subtle place. So in that way, it can be helpful to think about them sequentially, but know that the way that many people practice them is like a wheel. So you can visualize, a wheel with different knobs on it, and just getting off where we need to do the work. So where we feel like maybe we need a little bit of guidance in our lives, we can go and visit that limb. So we begin with what's called the yamas. The yamas, think of these as observances, and we're beginning to recognize our behaviors through the yamas, our behaviors with ourselves, our behaviors as we interact with others and with the world. And think of this as like cleaning up your behaviors. So these guidelines are here not as a way to shame us, but as a way to illuminate maybe the things that we can clean up. So within the yamas, we have 5, and the first is Ahimsa. Ahimsa translates as non-harming, and we can think of this in terms of harming, on a very surface and literal level, like harming people, harming any living thing, harming our planet. So we begin to think of the ways that we can clean up the things that we buy, what we consume, our speech, our habits, how we interact with others, and how we interact with ourselves. And I think one of the ways that we can really go deeper with this is really starting to clean up the inner dialogue. Noticing the way that we speak to ourselves, noticing if there's a harshness there, or if there's a voice there that is like a critic, that's like a dictator. Most of us live in our heads, and so just recognizing that is the first step, and redirecting through things like mantra, finding kind words for ourselves. A mantra can be as simple as, I am kind, I am loving, and repeating that through the day when we catch ourselves being harsh or being critical. Of course, cleaning up our speech with others, and noticing that space between stimulus and reaction. And man, that's a tricky one, to not go into that fight or flight mode and to just be reactive, but giving yourself just a little bit of time before you respond, especially with the people that we love the most. This tend to be where we can be the most harmful because we're most comfortable in those relationships. So Ahimsa, non-harming. You can practice this now, just in your daily life. You can practice it next time you're on your mat, recognizing when the inner critic comes online, and again, just redirecting. It's the very first step, is noticing and redirecting.